So dudes, in this video I'm going to talk about a phenomenon that afflicts Rainbow Six Siege, and from what I can guess, it's developers too. Namely that every year Rainbow Six Siege players seem to have a very particular idea of how they want the game to be balanced. The current meta, as a lot of people seem to call it, would be described as a gunfight meta. What I mean by this is rounds seem to end a lot more quickly than you may have been used to if you were playing this game really frequently in 2020.
Chair's in the way. This is not working.
Think fast, Choco Nuts. This video is sponsored by Gridge Wallets. The Ridge. This video is sponsored by The Ridge. The Ridge is a company that takes everyday carry items and reimagines them into more intuitive, functional designs that don't take up as much space in your front pocket. These key cases are new in town, but you're already familiar with the Ridge wallet. It holds up to 12 cards and you can keep cash on the back. You can also get a cavity tray to keep coins on the inside of the wallet, but I like these key cases a lot. How do these key cases work? Well, you see these two parts here. In the middle, there's a little bar that applies tension and you screw it in to secure it. Pretty smart design, if I do say so myself. High quality materials that are going to last a lifetime. Smart, intuitive design, and just less clutter in general. You can buy the key cases and the wallet as a combo together. If that sounds good to you, go to the link in the description, ridge.com/Gregor, and use the promo code Gregor at checkout. That's ridge.com/Gregor. Looks like I've almost collected all the Ridge Infinity Stones. Thanks again to Ridge for sponsoring this video. 2020 was when Space Station Gaming won the Rainbow Six Siege Invitational with strategies and tactics popularized in the form of a slower, more deliberate so-called structured siege. Structured meaning a great deal of emphasis on gadget usage to the umpteenth degree, including drones. This style relied on no stones unturned in terms of the intel game on attack, and a good deal of intel denial on the defense. You might remember the so-called SSG roam. This was an anti-intel clubhouse roam that featured Mute and Mozzie as essential building blocks to the formula. This slower-paced, deliberate style of siege was necessary to play at a high level due to the power of defender gadgets, which didn't have as many counterplay options at this point in time. Now, not everybody liked this version of Siege. It was often jokingly called the utility simulator. The kids wanted more of the high-octane gunplay that they fell in love with years ago. I remember this being a very consistent talking point. To solve this problem, Ubisoft eventually said, okay, we'll tone down the gadgetry a bit, but then we're going to run into the same problem in the first place. That problem being aim bros could just leverage their mouse clicking abilities over the strategically entertaining options that we have on the table that make Siege what it is. It's not really Siege if there's no reason to use the gadgetry. So Ubisoft realized that they could have their ACOG and eat it too by slowing down the pacing of the gunfighting itself in terms of the animations for ADSing, leaning, and so on and so forth. If you have good positioning and hit your timings, you can win rounds just because you shoot real good like Pat Mahomes. But if you want to play at a high level, you can't ignore the gadget gameplay. You still have to play as a team. Recoil was adjusted across the board to prevent people spraying at one particular aiming point as well. As far as solving the problem is concerned, in my humble opinion, Ubisoft managed to hit the mark here, but some things did change because defenders didn't have a giant bulletproof cone head that could effectively save you if you want to go up this staircase or that staircase anymore. Defenders have to play a little bit more aggro. They have to fight for map control at the very jump. They have to take engagements, take gunfights towards the start of the round, because if they don't, the attackers will just take whatever they want for free and give themselves a million avenues to work with in terms of carving up the defense. Turtle stratting is just not really a thing. That is just bunching up 5 people in the same room without trying to contest the rest of the map. So while the macro game of Siege requires one to have the knowledge to understand why Oryx is a good strategic decision to make on bank, the micro game, the split decision-making skills required to make that strategy matter, require some gun skill, dare I say, a little bit more now, maybe back then in 2020. That's not to say that the game is about who has the highest kill death, but it does play a factor in the bigger picture. So ironically, the smart way to play the game is to play a bit more aggressive, to play more Call of Duty-like. But now that's too much, apparently. I thought it was never too much, Bolulin. Now it is too much. People are claiming the game has gone too far down this path. It has to return to its roots as a tactical shooter. Gadgets need to matter more. Strategy and prior planning needs to matter more. And I find this mindset somewhat amusing because I'm certainly not an aim-centric player in Siege, although I don't think my aim is terrible. I do prefer to play backline support roles because, I'll be honest, I don't trust people to drone or to call out or to watch cams. So really, this meta serves to benefit me and players like me the least. But I'm actually not having a bad time playing. And maybe that's my personal experience. Maybe that's the stack I'm playing with. Who knows? But in the past 3 years, the game has had plenty of operators added that benefit a more deliberate, prior planned approach to Siege. So this narrative kind of moving in this direction does strike me as a little bit strange. Starting from the top after Steel Wave, Aruni has an indestructible area and gadget denying tool that makes sound cues when it is burned. Flores has an RCXD from Black Ops, of which its sole purpose is to get rid of defender utility. Osa has a bulletproof see-through shield that gives a completely different gunfighting advantage for passive angle holding the attackers would not have otherwise. Azami is almost an insta-pick and competitive right now because of her ability to close sight lines that attackers have very little options for dealing with. Sens, if used correctly, can cut off an entire room's line of sight from the defenders. Solus can shut down the enemy intel game single-handedly, and Brava is a freaking gadget thief. Her entire gameplay loop is interfacing with the gadgetry of Siege. What is going on? Why do people seem to disagree on what Siege is and how to make Siege feel like Siege? I think a lot of this has to do with the skill gap. I think that Ubisoft is caught in a very difficult situation where they have a game that is played in a completely different way at a high level than it is at a casual level. And I'm not demonizing anybody who plays the game casually or doesn't care for esports. If they balance the game for the esports bros exclusively who want to rely on their gun skill, then the game is going to be boring as shit to watch and play, right? That is not the same thing as balancing for esports. I'm saying balancing for esports players who want to rely on their gun skill more than the gadgetry and strategy aspect. All right? Don't misquote me in the comments saying, oh, Greg finally gets it. He realizes the game is balanced for pro league. Okay, I'll bitch you about it. Believe it or not, professional Siege players are individuals. Some of them think the game is fine. Some of them think that the game needs to go to a more gadget-based kind of focus. On the inverse end, if the game cuts the gunplay aspect out completely, it'll become League of Legends with guns sometimes, and I don't want either of these things. Siege is at its best when it hits the sweet spot in the middle, when the strategy portion complements the tactics portion. This dance, this yin and yang is what separates the game from every other FPS game on the market, and it manages to stray away from the common criticism other esports titles get quite often, which I think deserves commendation. How many times have you seen a meme on Twitter about Valorant's power creep, where it's just a million flashing colors on a given site? How many memes have you seen about how Overwatch is just this big blob of colors and anime fighting? Whether we like it or not, Siege is carried by the casual community. I hear that the game is difficult to see and understand from a competitive point of view, but I think it's more so just because of the knowledge gap. It's not a visual conveyance issue. There are a lot of things going on that you can't really pick up on unless you've watched a significant amount. It's kind of like American football. If you're not really familiar with the methodology of how a football play works, you're just going to see a bunch of dudes running into each other. Now, I think esports is an important life support system for the game from a marketing point of view, but the average Siege player does not give a crap about esports. They log in for a few games on the weekend or when they get off work, and they go back to their life. Siege is too hard to understand to the point where you can start talking about a lot of this intricate game balancing at a high level. That's why there is a demand in terms of Siege content on YouTube for breaking down patch notes, talking about balance changes, what we content creators think about these decisions that Ubisoft makes. And I'm not saying that we should come up with Siege opinions for you. In fact, I find a little bit of parasocial relationship weirdness involved with all of that. But I'm gonna tell the truth, okay? I'm gonna be completely fucking honest here. I cannot count. It would be impossible for me to count the amount of straight up uneducated and raw as shit comments you will get on Siege TikTok, for instance. Content creators in this scene talk about this phenomenon often. You can bring a casual horse to water, but you can't make them use the drone spot. Siege has a two-pronged problem here. It scares away average shooter fans, and it attracts equal parts curious minds who enjoy the game's complexity, and Rick and Morty fans who play the smart game for smart people. I know it's easy to look at things with nostalgia glasses, but there are aspects about Siege right now back in year 1 or year 2 that simply just wouldn't work. Players with high mechanical skill could essentially lean on nothing but their ability to click heads with the more snappy controls. In particular, leaning was very fast, and the game in some ways became more about manipulating your hurt box and laser beams flying out of your face. Yet you had all of these tactical options that you could essentially ignore. I would not like to go back to this version of Siege. I think it's perfectly natural and perfectly healthy for a game that is 8 freaking years old to grow and to evolve. That is not unreasonable. If Siege is going to survive for much longer, it's going to benefit from the community having a clear idea of what the hell it wants. Ubisoft can capitalize on the space in these markets created recently where games like Call of Duty don't feel like Call of Duty anymore, quote unquote, because they slowed it down. If enough people feel this way, then you have a game like X-Defiant, which is basically Tom Clancy's Call of Duty, and that's okay. With Siege, it's important to go straight down the middle and hit this balance. Siege players want a little bit of gun and they want a little bit of go-go gadget, regardless of one person's opinion on Twitter might say. I personally welcome operators like Azami and Solus from a selfish point of view as a content creator because that gives me lots of avenues to create content because I'm interfacing with the game in a unique way. I am creating interesting gameplay loops that I get in Siege and no other kind of video game. And if it gets a little bit too much power creep, maybe we can add a longer pick and ban phase. I don't know. This is not an easy question to solve, but it is worth talking about. Thumbs up the video and subscribe if you liked this content. Just those two things do support the channel. Let me know what you think of the current state of the Siege meta. Do you think it's too gunplay focused? Do you think it's too gadget focused? What should Ubisoft do? I can't wait to read your raw opinions in the comments down below and yell at you. Thanks so much for watching. Deuces.